Good morning and welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie authors on their journey toward publication. My name is Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
I'm Rhonda Hagerman, and I write fiction and nonfiction.
I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols. I also contribute to writingshorts.net.
I'm Christina Catane, and I write in all different genres, and right now I'm writing a thriller.
Ooh, thrilling!
We kind of already knew that, but it's fun.
Can you see the fear in my eyes?
Well, welcome to our second live broadcast. We were live last week a little bit later than this. We did our at midnight Nano kickoff for the beginning of NaNoWriMo 2018. And this is our first live broadcast for NaNoWriMo, technically. But with every other broadcast that we have, every podcast, we share what's going on with our lives in a segment that we call What's Up. So I'm going to start with Rhonda. Rhonda, what is up with you today?
Well, let's see. Today, not a whole lot. I've got a lot of writing to catch up on. Yesterday, I had an all-day event at my museum. A lot of museums from the area got together and networked and learned about sorting library books and that sort of thing. And it was a lot of fun, and I feel like I got a lot out of it. And the one thing I didn't do yesterday was write. So I am 2,000 words behind almost. So today I'll be catching up. What about Tina? What's Tina been doing?
Well, it's been kind of a busy week. I had to go somewhere every day so far, which isn't really normal for me. But I've managed to get, I didn't write yesterday, but I've been writing. I feel like I can catch up today. My son got a brand new pet rabbit, so we've been having a lot of fun playing with him. My daughter's in Colorado, so I'm looking forward to seeing all kinds of pictures of her on the internet in Colorado.
Fun.
So other than that, what about you, Jamie?
Well, I'm trying to get used to Christmas at 80 degrees. It's really weird to drive through the downtowns here and see all of the holly jolly merriment and be like having the air conditioning like cranked in the car, because I'm from the frozen mitten, right? And so I'm expecting at least fall temperatures by now. Like my body still isn't really caught up with the reality of living in a sunshine state through all of the snowy parts of the year. So this has been really an interesting adjustment and fun. The second family from my Michigan circle is down here to see us. So that's kind of fun. I can't wait till we're really set up to actually host people here. But it is fun to drive into Orlando and visit with people when they come down. So that's on the schedule for today. Yay! I'm ahead for Nano, so I don't have any concerns there. And things are just happy and sunny. How about you, Jen? What's up?
I am right on target with Nano. So at the end of the night last night, I was like 200 words ahead. So I'm doing okay. I had gotten really behind because of headaches. I don't think I've ever talked about on air how I deal with like unexplained headaches every so often. I had a bad weekend. But thanks to my friends here on the podcast, and some word sprints that we did together, I was able to crank out over 5,000 words the other day. And so I got all caught up and feeling really good about my story. And I was just telling everybody before we started that I am really loving this story. I'm loving the characters, and I just can't wait to get back to it every day. So that's a good thing. I'm really excited about that.
You know, I really want Rhonda and Tina to answer the question that Jen asked, because Jen said, I'm really loving my story this year. How about you girls? And none of us ever really answered it. We were talking before we went live here. And so I really would like for you guys to answer that question. But before that, I think we should define some terms, because what if someone's watching this and they don't even know what nano is and we're just kind of talking about it? So is someone willing to kind of do a recap of what it is we're even talking about?
I will.
Yeah, go ahead, Rhonda.
Well, Nano is short for NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. It's held in November every year, 30 days of nonstop writing. The goal is to get 1,667 words a day, which will give you 50,000 words at the end of the month. And that includes even writing on Thanksgiving, if you're someone like me who only does the 1,667 every day. But I I appreciate the people like Jamie who are so prolific and can write thousands of words ahead. That's amazing to me. But I really need to get the habit reinforced every November. So I think according to my page on there, I'm like, this is my 8th year or something. I've only won 1 year, but every year I've tried to be writing something, getting habits in. And anyway, so that's what it's all about really, is getting writing, good, solid writing habits in.
Right.
Okay, great. So when everybody's talking about if they're ahead or behind, it's with that 1667 a day. So if they're saying they're a little bit behind, it's like a couple days they didn't quite get to that amount. Or if they're ahead, they had some really prolific days and now they don't have so many to do to get to the 50,000.
Right. And Rhonda, for you to say that you're only doing the 1667, hurrah. Like that is like really awesome. So
Yeah.
pat yourself on the back. That is great stuff.
Oh, I will, because that's a lot of words for me.
But I love what you said though, too, is that even when those days that you don't get that, you're at least writing. And so that's kind of the goal of NaNoWriMo. It's, you know, you don't really win anything, even though everybody who participates talks about winning, you know, because you can download I think a certificate or something and you get some coupons for things, but you really don't win anything. But what you win is like getting some more writing out that you wouldn't have done before. So even if you're watching this podcast and you're like, oh, I'm barely getting 200 words in a day, praise Jesus, you got 200 words more in than you would have if you hadn't done this. So
yeah, it's like a gold star for your soul.
It is. We need gold stars. That's what we need for sure. Somehow we can like put on the screen.
I think we should put Rhonda in charge of getting the gold stars.
Yeah.
Because she's like the sticker person.
What about so who wants to talk about if they love their story? Jen had asked, do you good ladies love your story the way that I do? So how would you answer that?
I do like my story. I worry a little bit that it might not be thrilling enough. But it could just be that I know what's happening. You know, like I know what's coming, so it's not as anxiety inducing for me. So we'll have to see what you guys feel when I start reading more of it to you.
So Tina, I've never tackled a thriller before. I've read them, but I've never tried to write one. So is it just suspense? You just try to keep amping that up, or what makes it different?
Yeah, it's the suspense and it's really a lot of it is the anxiety of my main character. And, you know, she's running away from this relationship and she's trying to hide. And so her biggest fear is being found. And so it's just like things like taking her daughter into what some people call a town, which was like has 3 buildings or something, because they're in the middle of Alaska, to this trading post to get a milkshake. And looking at and wondering if the waitress is, you know, like picturing him coming looking for her and the waitress saying, oh yeah, I've seen them. They're out at this lake. So when she asks her where they're from, she tells the waitress they're from Hawaii and they're getting ready to go home. Their vacation's over. So,
Tina,
you know,
I don't know how much of what this book is like that you want revealed to everybody who might be watching or tune in later. So remind me after we're done here to tell you something that occurred to me during the podcast.
Okay.
Write it down, Jamie. Otherwise,
I would forget it for you.
Yeah. Who knew that we were having a suspenseful podcast?
Yes, and Tina, you are writing sort of a prescribed, like we told you what to write this year, right? Just out of fun, because we were kind of like deconstructing how to kind of plot a novel. And we decided someone should write this example novel that we're going to use to talk about plotting, and that's Tina. So Tina is doing something even a little trickier, I think, than people who are just writing the book they want to write. So
yes, I've never written a thriller before, so.
But you've read lots of them, right? Like if you guys were prescribed for me to write a thriller, it would be ridiculous because I've never even read one.
Well, and to be fair, we did give you the option to write it as a romance.
I think it would be much worse if I tried to write a romance.
We're laughing because we've read some of submissions that she has done that like dips her toe in romance. So yeah,
the heat level is a little above buffalo wings, I think.
Oh, yeah, I get anxiety ridden when I'm reading a book and I don't know if they're going to kiss or not. So I can't imagine if I was trying to read a suspense. That probably my thing.
Well, what about you, Rhonda? How much are you loving or not your book and your characters?
I do like it quite a bit. And I think that I got, I've always been an outliner, but I really, really thoroughly outlined. And then I outlined parts of my outline. So I just like being told what to do. And then I will work inside of that. And I've already told myself what to do. And so it's just easy. I can sit down and say, even if I don't feel like writing a scene, I still have guidelines. I don't have to wait for inspiration. And I think that's what I think I've found the key to my writing style. And I'm going to run with it. And I do like the story. I like my character. And this is my first romance. I've never tackled one before. So I thought this would be a good time for it. Plenty of excuses for it to turn out bad. So I'm going to run with that. But I do like it. And then I've brought my mom in on it. And she's got some really good ideas, as always. So
I think two things about what you said. First of all, Jen Tong had said before, she quoted someone, if you're waiting for inspiration to strike, you're not a writer, you're a waiter. And I think kind of what you're saying. You're like, I'm just going to write these words that I've committed to write. Also, I'm going to take out the sound bit of you saying, I like being told what to do. And I'm going to make that
Is that recorded? How many people heard that?
Everybody in the whole world.
I had the same thought, Jamie, ooh, I'm going to use that to my advantage.
I was just thinking how opposite we are, because I do.
Today is opposite day, right?
What to
tell
do.
me.
Don't tell me what to do.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, let me clarify. I like being told what to do and then get out of my way. Okay, just give me a task and let me do it.
That sounds more like the Rhonda I know.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I really am enjoying my book. And I think I will be the only one on the planet that enjoys this book.
Because, I already enjoyed it.
Stephen King, I just heard him accept a medal. It was way back in 2002. I don't even know, but it was something the library had on audiobook. And I wanted something to listen to, whatever. So he writes mainstream, well, not mainstream, but genre. He does genre fiction, okay? And this award that he got was apparently only usually given to literary writers, okay? So it got me into first of all, exploring what does it mean to be a literary writer? What does it mean to write genre fiction and all this kind of a thing? And it kind of, anyway, that's a bunny trail. But what he said that really struck me was that he never wrote for money, even when he should have been writing for money. They were living in a single wide trailer. They had a kid, possibly one on the way. And he was working at a laundromat. And then he would come home at night and write. And he said if his wife ever would have even hinted that you need to give up your dream and go and get a job, he would have done that and been fine doing that. But she was like, no, you're not taking that moonlighting job because it'll cut into your writing time, etc. And he said he just wrote what he liked or what he thought was good or kind of whatever. And he said, he talked for a long time, obviously. But the thing that I took away was just I don't think that I'm the kind of person that can be a right to market so you can sell a bunch of copies kind of a person. And I think that may hurt me as far as selling books or whatever. And I'm just going to have to accept that because I just kind of can't. I just have to write the way that I think would be good. And unfortunately, that's a lot of long sentences, which apparently isn't great because people don't want to, it's a lot of kind of the stuff that I like to write. I don't think is what people like to read. Just the bottom line. And
it depends what people. Because I like to read books that have those long sentences.
Yeah.
That are a little bit higher reading level kind of stuff. I get bored with these, short sentence, easy read kind of stuff. So.
Well, and if I'm going to say authentic to who God made me, that's different too. And, okay, so it's one thing, I'm not saying there's anything evil in writing to sell. That's not kind of what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is if I'm not comfortable doing that right now, that's okay. I guess is just what I'm trying to say. I don't have to, thank God, be the one to put food on the table with my writing. But then I guess that's the whole thing. And even Stephen King, when he should have, didn't. And then he sold Carrie and the rest is history. But, I don't know. It was just really profound. So this book, the reason I'm so far ahead is because I'm taking a lot of time with this character and hoping to show people what she's like. Also, I have some scenes in there that are going to be, but the stuff that I'm even going to keep, I think, is possibly a little too literary for genre fiction, and it's just going to have to be okay.
As you're talking, I can't help but remember this interview. I know I've mentioned on the podcast before, but an interview that I just kind of happened across live of Jeanette Oak years ago, a couple of years ago. She was at some sort of like One Calls the Heart little kind of get together thing, and they interviewed her. And what the thing that really stuck with me, she said, characters matter. And I think that is why you are going to be successful, Jamie. Like you may not have like a set genre. You may not be able to say, I write, specifically this kind of genre. Here's my audience, but you write characters like nobody else. And I think that's what's going to draw people to your writing. So,
well, thank you.
You're welcome. So as we were talking about this, a topic came up in mind I'd like us to discuss really quick. So yes, we all right now are in love with our novels. What happens to that person that's right now writing their novel for Nano and they're not loving it? Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's get out some advice. What do you guys think? If someone were to come to you and say, I hate the novel I'm writing right now, what should I do?
Fix it.
All right, how?
Well, they can go through and find out where all their story points are. Find out what their structure's like. If it's not working, more than likely they didn't outline it.
I agree. I think that's lots of times it's a structure issue. If you're having a hard time getting started, take a break from writing and try to get some structure into your story. I agree with that. Anyone else?
Don't treat your daily writing as this has to end up in the novel. It can be conversations between two characters during which you might learn something about your character that propels their motivation in a different direction. So that's one piece of advice. My other piece of advice is a when suddenly. Okay, so basic story structure, if you're doing an improv scene, once upon a time, just like every other day, the story's just going along. When suddenly a dragon appeared and ate everybody, right? Well, they can't eat everybody, their story's over. But the bottom line is throw a when suddenly at your characters. Something happens unexpected and they have to deal with it and relate to it. Again, it may not end up in your final draft, but if your goal is to develop a daily writing habit, just don't stop writing it. Just think of interesting things to put your characters through or interesting conversations. Or it doesn't even have to be interesting. Start with, hi, Bob. Hi, Sue. Before you know it, they're arguing. And you're like, where did that come from?
Right.
I think another thing that you could do is to get one of these worksheets that you can find all over the internet on developing your character and get to know your character a little better. Maybe still write every day and maybe write a journal for that main character or something. So that, because a lot of times for me, if I'm bored with a story, it's because I really don't care about my characters. And just like a reader will put a book down if they don't care about your characters, it's really hard to write a book if you don't care about your own character.
Wow.
That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
My number one piece of advice would be just keep doing it. Keep plugging away. Because number one, we are our own worst critic. So you might hate it and think that it's the worst writing that has ever come out of a laptop, but it may be gold and you just can't see it. But like Jamie insinuated, is that just keep going and adding things and keep trying, and you will be surprised, especially with writing sprints. It like activates a different part of our brain, and just the creativity comes out that we didn't even know was there. Just keep doing it, and by the end of the month, yeah, you'll have 50,000 words. Maybe only 30,000 of them are usable, but hey, you have 30,000 usable words. So take that pressure off of you. Like Jamie said, don't go into this thinking that every single thing you write during Nano has to be usable, because whether it's specifically usable, it's going to improve your writing and it's going to improve your story. It's going to bring out things that you didn't even think about. So just don't give up.
Well, I would like to talk about writing sprints for a minute, because to be honest, when I first started doing writing sprints, it was like, ooh, I wonder if I can write more words than, whatever that guy over there in the corner, because it was like a group write-in thing. And at first you're wanting to outnumber the number of words that you're putting on the paper. And I think that's a really great motivator and a really good reason to do word sprints. But so when the thrill is gone, so to speak, we all write together all the time. And we all know what word count everybody is going to have every time. So once you've stopped trying to win the word sprint by being the most prolific, what keeps you coming back to word sprints and why are they effective? What do you girls think?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I was way behind. And in that one day that I got like 5,000 words, I sprinted with Jamie early on. And Jamie is way ahead. In case, if you guys want to go head over to Nano and find her on there. What is your handle on Nano, Jamie?
J.R. Hirschberger? Yes.
I'll have to look that up. I am Jen with one N, Carl with two L's, Tong, no spacing. Anyway, she is way ahead. She does not need to be sprinting with me, but as my friend, she stuck it out with me for hours. We were on there for probably 3 hours. We'd do 25 minutes and then we'd chat and move around for a bit. Then we'd sit down and do another one. And then later that evening, I talked with Rhonda and she was needing, to be sprinted with. And I had reached my goal, but I was still behind total with that day's goal. So I sprinted with her. And so for me, sprinting is accountability with each other. Oh. And it just makes me take you don't do anything else, but you write during that time, and it gives me accountability and helps me to keep others accountable. That's what it is for me. Anyone else?
There's like a social aspect to writing sprints because it's completely different when I do a writing sprint by myself, and when we get on Hangouts and do them together. Because if I'm by myself, so many times I just kind of space out and get up and walk away, or because it probably comes back to the accountability you were talking about. Also the fact that at the end everyone's going to go, "What did you get?" Just that little question, and so I stick to it better when there's peer pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Would you add anything, Rhonda?
Yeah, I guess I'd say with that little character reveal about myself a few minutes ago, it's like I'm sitting there and I'm being told, okay, you're not doing anything right now but writing, And I think that's part of the reason I never really got off the ground before, because as a mother, I always had that, well, the writing's for me and my family has all these needs, so I just don't have the time right now. But if I'm doing a writing sprint, then that's my job for the moment. And also, I don't have that mother guilt anymore. I'm totally over that. But anyway, so that's why I do it, because I know this is just solid writing. I only have to do it for 25 minutes, and then I can, give my mind a break if I have to.
I'm up to my neck in mother guilt, all the time. But the writing sprints, I'm glad you said that, because the writing sprints help me to say I'm in a sprint. I even have a little piece of paper here that I was holding up the other night when the kids would come up, and my kids understand. They're like, okay, it's a sprint, we're not allowed, but as soon as it's done, we have mom's attention, and so that helps to build boundaries too. My kids know they're loved, but
technology is amazing that we can do this sort of a thing, because also it's like a behavior check for the kids. Are you on a call? They don't want to be being naughty and have the world or whoever.
Right. Yeah. They don't want to be found out.
My youngest came up earlier to me today before we started actually live. And she's like, "Can they see me?" She doesn't want to be seen. So that helps.
That's really cute. Well, I think that those are really awesome answers about the writing sprints. And I would sort of, you check my answers, but yeah. And then also, Rhonda, I would like to know, because your word count has increased as you've continued to do word sprints. So in 25 minutes, you've gone from doing a couple hundred or whatever. And so do you think it's the fact that you outlined, because we do 15-minute writes before each podcast, and you're a little bit exasperated about the number of words that you get. Yep. So do you think it's more that you're flexing a muscle when you're doing the writing sprints, or do you think it's because you've outlined? Which do you think is more helpful?
More helpful, probably the outlining, because I'll tell you, I have about 250 words for today's writing sprint, and there's no outline for it. We were just given a word and write about that word. And I was like, where's my outline? And nothing. So yes, the outline is number one. And also just because my brain's been lubricated, so writing is coming a little bit faster the way that it does.
Your brain is glowing.
It is glowing. Yeah.
Well, it's
very
funny.
80s with it.
Yes, I've been trying to write 500 words a day since January or June 1st. And I have written every day. I haven't always gotten to 500 words, sometimes 350 or whatever. So I'm like, okay, so writing daily isn't really something NaNoWriMo can help me with, whatever. I'm already working on that habit. Fine. But talking to you ladies earlier in the week, I said writing 1677 or whatever it is way different than writing 500. And also it's all on the same piece. Because when I write 500 words a day, I might jump over to short story X, Y, or Z, literally, that I wanted to continue working on or whatever. But this is focusing on one piece for 1667, which is a way different animal than just disciplining yourself to write something every day. So it exercises a different kind of muscle doing NaNoWriMo.
Yeah, Jamie and I were talking between one of our sprints earlier this week and talking about how do we maintain this? Like November is awesome because we produce a lot of words and they're good words and we have a good writing habit. And then December comes and then what? Like, could we sustain this? I think there are a lot of writers out there in the world that do, that produce a lot of novels every year. And they're able to do that. And so we kind of discussed that as well. Maybe that is a topic that we can talk about next week. Look forward to really delve into this, or maybe in a couple weeks. Like what are ways that we can like carry this on and look forward to that. So
I love Jen's sort of pseudo plan that she was thinking. She was like, well, maybe I will outline a book in this month and then plan to write the book the following month. And so then you're kind of like treating every other month the way that you would look forward to a NaNoWriMo. You know, you're going to have your butt in the seat writing this particular book or whatever, and you already have it figured out the month before going into it. But that's Jen. And anyway, just kind of, I thought that it was a very good idea for her because of how she writes and how she outlines and all of that stuff. So
right, because every writer is different, and it works for Jamie to write every single day, and it should work for me to write every single day, but it hasn't been, right? So maybe the problem is I'm lazy and I'm not committed enough, or maybe the problem is that I'm a different kind of writer. I'm not a pantser or a planter. I am definitely a plotter. So maybe I need to schedule my life to where 1 month I spend a whole month really doing this, like really having a solid outline, and then the next month I write. Maybe I'm that kind of writer. I don't know, but that's the whole point of this podcast too, is that we are all on a different journey and we're just doing the journey together. And so as you're watching out there, you might be able to identify with me or with Jamie or with Tina or Rhonda. That's the whole point, is that we're all here to kind of like move forward together. So well, speaking of moving forward, it is time for us to transition into our feedback time.
All right.
So excited. So in the past, we've done all kinds of different writing activities. So let me explain to you the kind of feedback that we're going to give. When we have our actual writing group and when we have the postcast, we submit something that is edited and we've worked on for a while, and then we get actual critique for it. But during the podcast, right before we start, we will write something quick and share it raw. So it's really just about sharing and not being critical of each other, but pulling out the best parts of it and being able to compliment each other and just cheer each other on in our writing journey, which is what we're going to be doing today. So today, because we are in NaNoWriMo this month, we wanted to make sure that every single thing we write this month goes towards our final count of our word count. We are not going to we're going to take advantage of this. So we had at our kickoff for our local Nano, they gave us a list of words that were challenges that every day it's a different word you have to try to fit into your writing that day. And so we did that for our writing. And the word that we had was bridge. So today, as we share our little quick writes, they're in the world of our novel. It may or may not end up in our novels, but it's going to be in that world, and it has to have the word bridge in it. So.
Okay, so while you were explaining all of that, I pulled up a list randomizer and I put my name in the top row, just for the record. And random.org put Rhonda first to share, then Jamie, Tina, and Jen. And we always, we only had 15 minutes. Well, we get extra grace and extra excuses today because we've been writing these people in these worlds and we know our character. So maybe to you, this character will feel like a stranger. So many apologies on all of our behalfs. But we have some time here that we can talk about a little bit of backstory or whatever each of the hosts needs to do to make it seem like relevant to someone who might be tuning in.
That's a great idea.
Okay.
You want to tell us a little bit about your characters or where you think this might fit into the story just to help catch everybody up? Or you want to just go ahead and read?
I guess this could be my main character. And the bridge is next to the museum that she curates. And It probably will not end up in my novel. I mean, it's only like 200 words, so I might fit it in somewhere.
It's
Oh,
200
that's right.
more words than you had, so good for you.
That's true. That's true. All right, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. The bridge had such a peaceful feeling surrounding it. My gut clenched when the memory of the battle with the township resurfaced momentarily. Relief flooded in just as quickly. I'm so glad they didn't tear it down. I shot a quick prayer into the air, asking God to bless Mr. Harper today. He's the man who made saving the bridge possible. We're almost at the spot Grandpa always said was special. Just off center to the right of the path from the direction I always came anyway, I looked for the hole left by a knot in the tree. I showed you that little hunk of wood in my treasure box, I reminded Sally. She nodded. It came from this piece of wood. She stuck her fingers into the hole. Then she ran her hand along the smooth handrail above it. Why did you keep a knot? I didn't. Your great-grandfather did. All the lumber from this bridge came from his grandfather's property right down the road here. In fact, this is the third bridge his family built right here. So why did he say this is special? What can the hole do? Well, you're having a bad day, right? Let's see if it works for you. She knelt down before the knot hole and her daughter followed suit. The first thing you do is ask. That's as far as I got. Do you understand my reaction now?
Yeah, when the timer went off, I had my mic muted, so like no one heard the countdown. So I had to go on and say, "Oh, we're done," and everyone jumped like, "Oh no!"
Rhonda, I get compliments from you ladies about character, but you do relationship so well. I love how you characterize relationship, and I also thought it was kind of neat how your brain used her emotions flooding with the bridge. Like it was, I don't think on purpose. But
I'm brilliant. I didn't even think of that.
It's so cool what your brain will give you, isn't it?
Yeah. That's another reason I like these sprints is because, stuff comes out. Like the other day I was doing a sprint and I don't want to, this one probably will end up in my novel. But so the romantic interest, he met the family and the daughter's over here talking about whatever. And all of a sudden she looks over and the father has the boyfriend doing pull-ups on the apple tree branch. And I'm like, what? Why is he doing that? And I wrote it, I'm totally surprised myself.
I love that though. Like, I mean, I really want to know, was it like, I bet you couldn't do 10? Like, what was going on in that conversation?
Right.
It's so funny. We talk about our imaginary people. That's great.
Rhonda is really, really good at nostalgia too.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
The feeling of nostalgia and everything you write is really strong.
Totally agree with that, Tina.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Does your back feel fed, Rhonda?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, so I'm just going to read this to you because I feel like it's fine. Standalone kind of a thing. They turned off the 2-track and hit pavement. Ahead lie the insert name here, bridge. Brianna's hand went to the seatbelt fastener, and she put her other hand on the switch that would lower her car window. She hated driving over bridges. It was almost as if she expected to one day be challenged by careening over the side of the bridge and would have to be able to escape quickly. As the truck crossed the bridge, Brianna looked down at the light that reflected on the water. Like diamonds, she thought. She had never paid much attention to things in the natural world. She realized now how much she had overlooked the simple things and how miraculous they were. At the same time, she thought about refraction, how light was broken when it passed through water or glass, and her mind turned to other broken things. Blessed are the poor in spirit. She thought about the condition of her own soul, miserable and far from the Lord for so many years. She was uncertain when the slide had started, though the death of her brother was certainly a giant shove in that direction. While her father had seemed to press into God to help him with his grief and pain, Brianna had simply become angry with God for taking away her one and only playmate. As for mother, well, there was a broken soul, if ever there was one, Brianna thought. Even from her child's point of view, Brianna could see her mother had taken the suicide of her son as a final confirmation on what she had always suspected about him. He was no good and despicable, and now eternally lost. Odd, Brianna thought, that she would seem to be the most spiritually broken, the most hardened, when her church attendance and prayer life had become central to her life from that point forward. Mother was in church every time the doors opened, taking communion so frequently, Brianna wondered that she had an appetite for the evening meal. Mother's faith was an astringent, it seemed, applied liberally to wash away not just pain and uncertainty and regret, but also other bothersome emotions like filial love. How much longer? The radio preacher asked. How much longer will you refuse the call that the Lord has placed on your life? Can you believe this guy? Roy said. Brianna said nothing. She had learned long ago that Roy's railings about the words of the radio preachers were not questions that were meant to be answered. She thought about what the man's message had been so far, a great calling on the life of a believer. Brianna inventoried the daily workings of her life and wondered if she might be guilty of refusing a great calling. After all, women in her stage of life were often exalted for things like raising children. She had no children to raise. Perhaps her calling was to simply continue to support Roy in his ministry. Or perhaps the reason she felt no great calling on her life ran far deeper than her short-sightedness, her inability to perceive what it was the Lord wished her to do. Perhaps she had no calling because she was not rightly a believer.
Wow. You did that in 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow. Is this going in your story?
Possibly, because I don't know, I kind of say a little bit of something kind of like this already in the story, but it was a word sprint and I just wanted to keep going. So it might just replace something.
The language of you with the light breaking through the water and how that transitioned into like her spiritual state. So well done. Like I was there, and I just like, not just there physically, like seeing the light go through the water, but like all of a sudden I was in her head and feeling all the emotions she was feeling. I feel like she's numb. Yeah, there's all these emotions as well churning in her that she's trying to stay numb too. Like, so good.
That's such a good way to put that. Yeah. I can't wait to talk about it in the podcast.
I know. So those of you that are just now tuning in, we have a postcast that for those of you that would join us in our Patreon page, and we have all submitted from what we have written this week. And Jamie's, I can't wait to, all the girls, I can't wait to go on and talk about it. So if you're interested in hearing more of Jamie's story or any of ours, go on over to Patreon and join. Good stuff, Jamie.
Well, thank you.
Always.
Appreciate that.
Yep. You feel well fed?
Oh yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate all that encouragement.
All right, Tina, you're up.
You're up, Tina.
Okay. So the basic theme of this story is Rory, main character, and her daughter Bella ran away to Alaska to hide in the wilderness away from boyfriend. So the basic theme is domestic violence. So for the story. Okay, Rory raised the axe above her head, putting her right foot slightly forward like Alex had shown her, and swung it down toward the log in front of her. She slid her right hand backward along the handle as it came down. She jumped in surprise, letting out a little screech when the axe blade hit its mark, splitting the dry log almost all the way through. She lifted the axe, log still attached, and tapped it against the ground, splitting the log the rest of the way. "Why are you doing that, Mama?" asked Bella. "We have to use wood to heat the cabin. I'm going to split as much of it now as I can before winter. That way I don't have to split wood in the snow and the cold." Bella had obviously lost interest halfway through the explanation, as she noticed a flower she hadn't before, tucked in behind another bush at the edge of the yard. "Ooh, pretty," she cooed, fingering the soft blue petals. "Those are forget-me-nots," Rory informed her. "That's a silly name," said Bella. "Maybe, but I bet you won't forget it." Rory put her split pieces on the wood pile, grabbing another log and getting back to work. It felt good to work hard, feel the muscles in her arms and back as she swung the axe. She knew she'd be sore tomorrow, but she could cross that bridge when she came to it. It didn't take long before she had quite a pile of wood and her stomach started to rumble. "Come on, Bella, time for lunch," she called. But the little girl wasn't where Rory last noticed her. How long ago was that? Panic slammed into her with physical force. "Bella," she cried. "Call out so Mama can find you," but there was no answer. Rory ran around the perimeter of the property, frantically calling Bella's name every few seconds. She ran into the trees and searched for any signs Bella had come that way, but saw none. She ran down to the dock. The water was so clear, She could easily see rocks and sticks on its bottom, but there were no signs of Bella. What was she going to do? The urge to lie down and roll herself into a ball right there at the end of the dock came over her. She fought it down, turning it and heading back up the hill toward the cabin. "The CB," she said out loud, running to the porch and flying up the steps into the house. She turned the switch on, picked up the mic, and keyed it. "Alex, are you there? This is Rory. Please be there." "Rory, what's wrong?" Rory breathed a sigh of relief that he'd answered so quickly. "It's Bella. She's gone."
Dun dun dun.
I was going to put the words "he took her," but the timer went off in the middle of the sentence.
Always in the middle of sentence.
Mm-hmm.
That's good stuff, Tina.
Yeah.
Is this one of your disasters? Like, is this the end of your first act? You think?
Yeah.
When she split the log and it scared her, like she did it right, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The first time she felt like she ever did anything right in her whole life, or anyway, I've got so many questions about her from this little snippet.
What I love is the whole bit about the flower. That's a silly name, but I bet you won't forget it. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I loved the log splitting too, because without you saying to the reader, she was a city girl, not used to having to do this kind of work. You showed us, like, not only did she not know what she was doing, it scared her that it actually worked. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I just love that. And anyone who has split wood, which probably not a lot of people, I mean, to me, it's like, oh yeah, I split wood. You know, like if you don't live in Michigan, like an area like we do in Michigan or whatever, you may never have done that. So like, it was very well done. Yeah, loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good, Tina. It's really just amazing what will happen when we are just like, okay, time to write. And then out comes this stuff. Like, was this a scene that, and also your use of the prompt bridge, quite clever.
Yeah, I might take that line out because I only
cross that bridge when I come to it.
I only put it in there because I had to use the word bridge. But.
Yeah.
Very good.
It could be an Easter egg, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we should all have to use these somehow, so that when we actually publish, people that have seen this episode have to go back in and look for it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even if it's like in your acknowledgments, I would like to thank the Zilwaukee Bridge for inspiring me to write the scene on page 42 or whatever.
Well, like in the novella Searching for Anna, which started off as a writing prompt that we all had to do, in the back in the acknowledgments, I want to like thank you, and say, here are the words that I had that started off this novel, and then let people have to go back and find how I use it.
Yeah, word hunt. That'd
be fun. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Reading is interactive. All right, so we still need to hear Miss Jen with her romantical story. So, is it a kissing scene?
No.
I know how much you love to write, though. So,
but
really
if you stick around for the postcast, I submitted 2 Seth scenes.
Say that again, Tina.
Yes,
Seth scenes.
I was quite disappointed when I read it yesterday, by the way.
But the first time I said that, I was writing a Seth scene during a writing sprint. Jennifer thought I said sex scene, so that now it's become like a joke.
I was a little scandalized, I'll be honest.
Little spicier than buffalo wings. That's Tina.
That's not what kind of thriller I thought she was writing.
So Jen, I have to know, when you got the prompt, right? Did you then look at your outline and pick a scene to write, or did you just kind of write whatever about a bridge?
I wrote what's next. I'm like, I'm doing this and I'm going to find a way to fit it in there. And that was the challenge for me. Like, how am I going to fit this? I know what I'm writing next. How am I going to fit it in? So, which was exciting for me because it made it harder. Right. So
that's what I did too.
You made the word bridge, the sound that someone made when they were sneezing.
Yeah. Bridge. How would you write that? You sneeze, bridge. Like, I don't know. All right. So here's some background a little bit. Unfortunately, it's after my first plot point, the end of my first act. So I'm going to give away a little spoiler here. But So the premise of my story is that Sarah was sent away to Bible college by her parents because she kept getting into trouble and she didn't want to be there. So her plan was, I'm going to get kicked out by throwing myself at a professor. And it worked. She got kicked out, but she also got the professor fired. So fast forward to the end of the first act, she now is working as a governess for a very rich, wealthy family and has been invited to a dinner party with that the family is throwing because she is to sit with a minister because that was one of the reasons why they hired her, because she was a pastor's daughter and would be able to fulfill that function at dinner parties to be able to, kind of host people of, religious background. Anyway, long story short, she gets introduced to the older brother of the children that she's educating, and it's her professor. So this is the scene after their fight, where he basically tells her, the minute I tell my mother who you are, you're out. And then now it's the next morning. She didn't sleep well. Now she's running late and is running basically to the boys' room. And so this is where we are right now. Okay, beginning of my second act. She had had a fitful night's rest, crying herself to sleep and tossing and turning most of the night. She knew that she deserved every harsh word that Professor Foley had spat at her, but it hadn't made it any easier to endure. His insults echoed in her head all night long, no matter how hard she tried to sleep. The rough night extended late into the early morning, causing Sarah to oversleep. She was still in bed when the tray was delivered with her morning breakfast, but she had no time to eat. Having dressed quickly, she now found herself trying to appear as calm as possible as she dashed up the grand staircase. She only hoped the boys hadn't gotten into any mischief in her absence and that her tardiness would go unnoticed by Mrs. Sutton. She knew it was a pipe dream, knowing already the boys' propensity for naughtiness, but she hoped for the best anyway. When she arrived at their rooms, neither boy was to be found in their bedrooms or in the upper playroom that bridged the two rooms together. She heard voices coming from the classroom, another bridge between the boys' rooms, and she slowly opened the door, fearful she would find Mrs. Sutton in wait. She did not find Mrs. Sutton with the boys, though that would have been a far better situation. Seated on a chair between the two boys, who sat working busily, was Professor Foley. She held her breath as Professor Foley looked up at her in shock. She had not expected to run into him again so quickly, and certainly not in the boys' classroom. She didn't know how she was going to handle the beratement in front of the two youths that she was only beginning to gain respect from. Professor Foley's jawline clenched. You're late. It wasn't said angrily or rudely, just matter-of-factly. I know. I'm so sorry. He stood. May I speak with you in the hall? What else could she say but, of course. She followed him into the hall that led back out to the rest of the second floor, wondering at what had happened to the blustering madman from the night before. Thank you for filling in for me, she said. I'm not usually tardy. He turned to face her. I didn't expect you to show up at all. 3, 2.
Oh.
Overachiever. I caught that.
Oh.
Bridge.
Oh, the bridge twice?
Yeah.
One was actually with an ED, and I thought they're not going to let me count that. So then I made sure I put it in again.
You're right. I would have struck it out.
I actually made a correction as I was reading it because, all right, his name is Professor Foley, but his mother is Mrs. Sutton. And all of a sudden I started calling him Professor Sutton in this because you learn that his mom is remarried. So like he is from her first marriage. So that's why they don't have the same last name. And that's where the confusion came in. And so I had to fix that. And also because this is Nano, matter of factly would be hyphenated, but not today because it's 3 words instead of 1.
Yeah, leave those hyphens out. You need everywhere.
Right. So there's my tip for those of you that are nanoing with us. Forget the hyphens.
Yes, and also you can change the font of stuff that you normally would delete to something that is a very pale color, like a pale pink, so that you can't see it on the paper, so it's not annoying you that those words that you hate are still there. And then when you upload to a word count generator, the words will still count for you. Because don't erase. That's ridiculous. Don't, even if you start a whole new book, why would you erase from your wonderful achievement of putting out so many words in such a short amount of time?
Right. And besides, what if you go back and think, wait a minute, I really like how I had it the first time. The second way is terrible. So you still have it.
Yeah.
Delete it.
I mean,
and there has been. Go ahead.
Well, they say 50,000 words because that's the length of a short novel. So the whole point is to be able to say, I wrote a novel in November. Well, so even if they're not 50,000 words that all go together, you still did what most people only dream about. You actually wrote enough words to be a novel. And some people don't do that in their whole life, much less in a month.
Exactly. I forgot what I was going to say, so it must not have been
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Jennifer, that all sounded really wonderful. And how much editing would you do to that to just slip it right in your novel?
Besides changing Sutton to
Foley,
probably not. I mean, for first draft, nothing. I'm just going to copy and paste this in for first draft. Second draft, I think there'll probably be some more description. I might, because I jumped because I knew we only had 15 minutes and I wanted to get to more of the meat of it. So I jumped quickly into him saying, can I see you in the hallway? You know, so I want her to be able to focus a little bit on, like, before he realizes she's there, I want her to, like, be watching how he interacts with his brothers, his little brothers, and how they totally respect him. And these little hellions are, like, doing their work and letting him, like, kind of take care of that. And because that's going to also kind of play into other things that happen later in the story. And so, like, I want to spend some more time there. But right now, I just had to get to the fact that, and I didn't get there in time. He's supposed to tell her, I didn't expect you to show up. I told you that to start packing your bags, and then he's going to leave and she's going to stay teaching, and she's just going to be sweating it, thinking he's, you know, going to tattle on her. And then the next scene is him with his mother, actually, and things don't go the way he expected. So I really can't wait for that scene.
I think that's really good information for a new writer, because the first year that I did Nano was the first time I really sat down. I heard about it just a few weeks before I was going to write, or before it was going to start. And so I thought, oh yeah, I can do that this year. I'm going to write a novel. And I didn't know anything about really what to do. And so I thought, well, my first line's got to be exactly what it's going to be when the novel's published by some huge publishing house. And, you know, the notion of how many drafts you go through was difficult. And then, you know, I learned as it went on, but then just getting the first draft out, I think, is like an expansion of your outline, because like you said, you skipped over description and that sort of thing that, you know, you come back and put in later. Right. And I just think that people don't think about that when they're trying to get the first draft out.
And I think before you write, I think that everybody thinks that they're just going to sit down and write and then a novel will be done. And it's not like that. And and people also think that this is my one novel. I have this one idea and it's so great. And I think that they put all of their eggs in that one basket, and that's great. You know, and that does happen sometimes, that becomes a breakout novel, but more times than not, that is your stepping stone to all the several novels that God is going to give you throughout your career. So just take it every step at a time.
Jen, I want to share something with you, but it's, I think, perilously close to kind of being a meat, but which is sort of a feedback that I would like a scene that is her worrying the night away. Like, so I don't know if you've got one on your outline. So instead of it just saying that she didn't sleep well, I would love to be with her in her bedchamber with all of these thoughts and what about this and what about that. Now, possibly you just weren't writing that scene, but I would really love to read that.
Me too now.
Yeah, I totally could see that, except that, like, because it was the end of the first act, and you want, like, people are like, oh, what's going to happen next? I wanted to get them right back in the action. And in my mind, I think that I was seeing her as she's trying to teach the boys, her, like, sweating it out in the classroom as opposed to us going through in the night, because but who knows when I go to write it, you know?
Yeah, and it could possibly end the first act. So it could, the end of the first act, instead of being whatever bombshell you drop on us, could be like later in that night she's fretting. Just a suggestion. You can take it or leave it. You can write it on a Post-it and then throw it away. You could even put it on a pink Post-it. Dumb ideas that Jamie has.
You have one of those too?
It's on the back. How did you know that?
Anyway.
There goes the isolation booth.
That's what you get for making jokes about Jamie.
You're being judged. Awesome. Anyway, so sorry. That's not really the purpose of this exercise. We're not supposed to give
it. That wasn't really meat. That was just a suggestion. I appreciate that. I don't know that I'll take it, but yeah.
Maybe someone else there will, though. I don't know who.
Yeah, and I just have to say, I visited a critique circle, and I really recently, and what I would like to say to this group is, thank you for just being gracious with your acceptance of ideas. You're really great at just listening and hearing, and then making the changes or not. And I think it's really important for people who are going to be going to writing groups, maybe for the first time ever after Nano is over, to kind of learn how to just quietly listen. If you want to be thinking in your head, that is the worst idea ever, fine. If you have a way to give a measured response like Jen did of like, well, I don't think so, fine. But most of all, don't just be like, I reject your idea, because that's exactly the way that you stop getting any feedback other than positive. And how will that ever make your writing any better? So
I mean, it entertains us, those of us that are there watching you. We come back later and talk about you. So that's entertainment fodder for us. But
that's great.
They're so encouraging.
Listen, anyone who's watching this has ever been part of a critique group where they don't have a really strong, solid relationship with everybody in that, has been to a critique group with the person that's like, I am the good writer here, and so I don't care what you have to say, I'm not changing it. We've all been there. So we're just laughing at you. If you're that person, just know you're getting laughed at.
Yeah, and we don't need to be told, well, if you read in my genre, you would understand X, Y, and Z, because it's not always that we don't know your genre. It could be that the feedback is valid in spite of, or maybe even because it's the genre. I mean, if you, and if you do feel that way, that's an example of things to keep to yourself. And then you can process later and say, well, good old Susie just doesn't really even like romance. So she, of course, doesn't understand it has to be a happily ever after. And I can't kill Luke off with the rattlesnake bite. He has to live no matter how unrealistic, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Just keep that to yourself and go home and talk to your husband or your gal pals about it.
Yeah, I will agree that there are certain nuances of every genre that if somebody is not familiar with your genre, they are not going to understand certain things. However, no matter what genre you write in, there is a thing called story structure. And if you are way off, like, I don't care if, like I've been admitted earlier, I've never read a thriller, but I can read what Tina is going to submit, and I can give her feedback that will help her story and be able to tell whether or not she's way off with story structure or not, whether I've ever read that or not. So you need to be polite, listen to people's feedback, and then you decide whether you're going to take it or not. But if you berate the people in your group, you're going to get nothing except for snide remarks when you walk away.
I mean, I was just about to say, well, most people know not to be mean when they're giving critique, but then I'm like, wait a minute, I can't even say that. Because I think a lot of people really forget, no matter how many times the group leader says, always say something nice first. People totally ignore that for some reason. I mean, here this person is coming to you with their baby and showing it to you, and you're being like, well, that baby's ugly. You know what I mean? Could you not at least compliment the bib or the bonnet or the blanket before you launch into how ugly the baby is? If you even need to say that, right? Like, is there not a diplomatic way to say, have you considered combing the baby's hair? You know what I mean? Like, so whatever. Sorry, I'm just coming off of a critique circle. So if you want to see critique received and given in a way that's healthy, you should tune into our postcast. We've talked about it a little bit before we plugged it. It's only $2 a month for 4 weeks of entertainment. They're at least an hour long, and it's us talking about work that we've submitted for critique. And these ladies are super gracious about receiving critique and also great at giving it in an appropriate way. So you should watch that if that's something that you need modeled, or slip a note to that person in your writing group that really needs to watch and see how to do it appropriately. And I'm not trying to say we're experts. I'm just trying to say we're kind to one another. That's all I'm really trying to say. I mean, I think it's a Christian sort of mindset to just be kind when you give feedback.
Speaking of being kind, look what Garcon just brought me.
Aww.
I have
Very
one
nice.
too.
I have mine handy too. Love the mug. Love.
We're so twinsies.
Yeah, we're so.
I hate to rain on anyone's parade, but we're out of time.
Yeah.
Nope, that's where I was heading. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Stick around for the postcast, as Jamie mentioned. You can also sign up for our newsletter so that you will never miss an episode of the Christian Indie Writers podcast. Just go over to christianindie.writers.net and subscribe there. So until next week, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.